Hi, I'm Harrison from Coding Kids, and welcome back to the second video in our GameMaker series, where we'll be creating a game that's really reminiscent of the old arcade game Asteroids. Last episode we created a player that can move around the screen and aim towards our mouse, and this episode we'll be creating projectiles for our spaceship that we can shoot at asteroids later.
Here we are. Now we can move around, aim, and fire. But you'll notice that we're kind of firing a little bit too quickly. There's nothing stopping our game from just creating a bullet every time the screen refreshes. So we're just going to get these really fast streams. We need to put some kind of stopper in that makes sure that we have to reload first. So if we close out of this, that's what we'll do now. So the first step in kind of creating this stopper so that we can't fire all the time is creating a variable, and I'll explain what that is in a second. But first we need to add a new event to our player, so press add event, and we want it to be a create event. So when we create our player, we want to assign a variable. So it's here in common, it's var with like this kind of down arrow. And what this does is it creates a variable, which is kind of like, you can think of it as a box, and you can give this box a name, and we're going to call it cooldown. Now, this box, you can edit what number is stored in there, and it's basically a way of saving information. So we're going to leave this value as 0 so that when it's created, there is no cooldown to how fast we can fire, because we want to be able to fire straight away. We haven't fired yet. So now we should go back to the step event, and in here we want to also add below if mouse down, we need to check if a variable is equal to an answer. So we'll drag this over here like that. And we want to make sure we're creating the bullet after we check the variables. So we'll move this down and move it to the right of if variable. So now it's kind of in this tree. And we want to be making sure that this if variable block, which checks what's inside our box, if that's the way you think about it, we want to make sure that it's checking our cooldown. And we want to make sure it's equal to or less than. And we want to make sure it's 0. So now if we try to fire, it'll go, okay, we're pressing the mouse down. It will check if we are able to fire a bullet, and at the start of the game it's 0, so yes, we will be able to. And then it'll create a bullet. But now we need to make sure that we're changing the variable back up to a larger number so that we have to wait again. So we'll assign the variable again after we've created the projectile. Make sure that we're assigning the cooldown variable that we've created. And we'll assign it to something like 15. You can change what this is depending on how fast you want your player to shoot. And then there's one more step we need to do. If we go back up here, and you can move around this kind of space by the same way you move around the workspace, by pressing in the middle mouse, if I haven't said that already. And you assign a variable after the if mouse down here. So you want to make sure that the bottom line is highlighted there. And you'll notice that this new line comes down. So it separates kind of this tree of logic we have from this tree. And regardless of what happens in here, when this check is completed and all this code is resolved, it'll come back here and it'll follow this line down and do this. So we want to make sure that we are using the cooldown variable. And we want to make sure that we're making the value -1, and then we want to check relative, because we want to kind of, every time this code runs, we want to reduce the cooldown by 1 from where it already is, so relative to where it already is. And remembering that since we're in the step event, this is going to run once every time the screen refreshes. So we're going to get this 30 times, as I hinted to earlier, but this is going to happen 30 times a second. So because we're using 15 as our value, if you do some maths, you can figure out that we'll be able to fire about once every half a second with this. So if we test this by running it and letting it compile again, there we go. Now when we hold down our shooting, we'll notice that we can only fire this fast. It's about every half a second. So this is working exactly how we want it to.